The story begins as a boy is reincarnated as the 13th Imperial Prince Noah Arcreight. The Emperor learns that his affinity is with water, so he bestows him the land of Almeria, since it's the home to many of the Water Clan. He orders his servant to check Noah's stats, and they're all amazed when they see that his water affinity is already at SS rank. They all think he's a genius, and he has no idea what's happening, but he knows that he has been reincarnated as a noble. We learn that the Mir's Empire is a rich nation of warriors in a mountain range, and its capital is situated on an open plain, where the people enjoy peaceful lives. The Emperor has over 10 children, who are known as Imperial Princes, and they're respected since they're the most famous nobles. We see that Noah is now 6, and we learn that everyone thinks his water affinity is SS rank, but it appears differently when he's the one looking at it. He realizes it increased after he was given Almeria, and his stats also improved after hiring maids, so he realizes he can get stronger by having more subordinates. He notices that he doesn't have a level cap, so there's no limit to how much stronger he can become, and the mates think he's amazing since he's so calm and composed. One of them, named Evelyn, notes that the Crown and 4th Prince have arrived to visit him, so he goes out to meet them. The Crown Prince Albert reveals that they have a present for him, but a dark aura suddenly appears in the room as a servant brings out a weapon box. Albert orders the man to open it, but Noah suddenly hears people screaming as he sees the cursed sword Leviathan. Albert tells him to pick it up, and he knows that he can't refuse since it's a gift from the Crown Prince, so he decides to accept it. Albert reveals that it's the strongest water magic sword in the Empire, and over 100 people have died trying to master it. But the 4th Prince Henry tells him not to worry, since they died the moment they tried to lift it. Albert thinks Noah can wield it since his water affinity is SS rank, and notes that he enjoyed the demonstration, so Noah realizes that he was testing him. As he leaves, Henry asks him if he made the right decision, since they know that the sword is priceless. But Albert thinks it doesn't matter, since it's better off in the hands of a genius like Noah, and notes that it should teach him what it's like to be bitten by his own pet. That evening, Noah wonders why his maid Zoe seems to be unhappy, and she tells him not to worry, but he wants to know what's bothering her. So she tells him she needs time off, and explains that her mother is now out of work because a flood destroyed her hometown of Doso. She reveals that her relatives want her to work in the red light district, since it's the only way for them to make ends meet, but he tells her he's heard enough. He decides to give her mother a job in the mansion, and notes that he'll pay her 10 reen a month, but Zoe thinks it's too much. He also notes that he has a spare house on the western outskirts of the capital, so she and her mother can use it, and she cries as she thanks him for his kindness. We learn that he doesn't want her to work in the red light district, since his reputation will be ruined if the people learn that she worked for him, so he wants her to continue serving him. He calls his butler Dylan, and tells him to buy as much land as possible in Doso, since he knows that conmen will try to take advantage of the people suffering from the flood. Dylan is surprised that he's already taken that into account, since he's never dealt with such a situation before, but we learn that he already experienced it during his past life. Dylan wonders how they'll get the funds, mentioning that they would need 700,000 reen, which is a ridiculous amount. Noah knows that the average income in the capital is 120 reen a year, and even his retainers only earn 8,000, but he does the math, and realizes that his household has 500,000. So he knows that he needs 200,000 more, and he orders Dylan to sell their land to the south, but he tells Noah they can't sell it since it was a gift from the Emperor. Noah notes that he's ready to accept his father's punishment, and explains that the nobles need to make sacrifices for the people, since it's their responsibility to keep them happy. Dylan decides to carry out his orders, and thanks him for his kindness, since Doso is also his hometown. Noah prepares to leave, and Henry asks him where he's going, so he reveals that he will inspect the land of Doso, since he plans to buy it. Henry asks him if he plans to use the Leviathan, so he explains that he doesn't plan to wield it, but he'll test it when he gets the chance. He wonders why Henry came to talk to him alone, so he explains that he looked into what Albert told him, and notes that the sword has a will of its own. It only obeys the person it considers its master, so Noah realizes that he must earn its recognition, and Henry warns him that he might die if he uses it. Noah and the others reach Doso, and he thinks the people lost their land deeds because of the flood, so he realizes that he needs to buy their lands based on the government office's lists. Dylan leaves for the government office, and Noah tells Zoe to come with her, since she knows her way around the village. They see people distributing food to the villagers, but Noah realizes that it tastes terrible, and a man notes that they're in no position to complain, since they need the food to survive. The local official named Geralt checks the food and thinks it looks fine, but Noah suddenly asks him if he's getting a kickback. Geralt doesn't recognize him, so he tells him they have the right to take something in return for their kindness, and the others agree with him. They all laugh at Noah since they think they taught him a lesson, but he tells them what they're doing is a crime, so Geralt prepares to teach him a lesson. Noah thinks that he's just like Leviathan, since they both prey on the weak, and it suddenly flies to his side. He knows that it's upset since he compared it to Geralt, and he tells it to show him its strength, so it unleashes its power, and he realizes that he's nothing compared to it. He tells it to use its power for the good of the people, and it finally recognizes him as its master, so it allows him to wield it. He uses it to cut Geralt's head off, so his guards prepare to arrest Noah, but Leviathan suddenly summons water to strike the ground, and it leaves behind a giant hole. The ruler of the land named Rowan suddenly arrives at the scene, and he bows before Noah, since he recognizes him as the 13th prince. He reveals that he's a servant of Henry, and tells everyone to show respect, since they're in the presence of royalty. They all bow before him, and he tells Rowan he executed Geralt for his crimes, but he still hasn't punished the chefs, so he wants Rowan to deal with them. He notes that they should start over with the food distribution, but they need to add more to the soup, and Rowan promises to follow his orders. The villagers are happy that they'll be able to eat proper food, and they all praise Noah, while Zoe realizes that he's amazing. Albert learns about what happened, and he can't believe Noah was able to control Leviathan, thinking he might be more useful than he thought. The Emperor summons Noah and tells him he heard about what happened, so Noah is ready to accept his punishment. But the Emperor thanks him for dealing with the people who took advantage of the flood, and notes that he would have cleaned the mess himself if he learned about them. Noah explains that it was a coincidence that he bumped into them, and the Emperor knows that he became Leviathan's master, so he asks his servant to check Noah's stats again. They realize that his water stat is now SSS rank, and the Emperor is impressed by his progress, telling him to use his talents for the Empire. Noah heads to the capital, since the eunuchs told him there's a popular singer who performs there. He enters a theater, where he sees a singer named Alice, and he enjoys watching her performance. But a group of thugs suddenly interrupts her, and the owner of the theater tries to stop them, but their leader pushes him away, and reminds Alice that she still needs to pay off her father's debt. He thinks she won't earn enough by singing, so he suggests using her body to make money, but Noah stops them, and explains that it's illegal to make children sell their bodies to pay off their parents' debts. Their leader grabs onto him, but he defends himself with Leviathan, so they promise to get revenge and run away. Noah tells the owner to bring them to him if they return, and asks Alice about her expenses, so she explains that it's a lot, since she pays for her mother's treatment. He offers to give her 25 rein a month if she continues singing, and promises to increase her pay when she improves, so she happily accepts his proposal. Noah returns to his mansion, and he sees the thugs outside, since they want to apologize for their actions. But he orders Evelyn to send them away, because a prince isn't someone they can meet whenever they want, and Henry tells him he made the right move. He explains that a prince shouldn't grant an audience to troublemakers, since it would affect their standing as royalty, but Noah reveals that he has another reason. He invites Henry to his room, where he tells him about Alice, and explains that he wants the thugs to think he's angry at them, so that they will leave her alone. Henry is impressed that he can think ahead, and notes that their other brothers who are close to his age aren't as wise as him, but Noah thinks they'll learn as they become more experienced. We learn that the Imperial Princes have different mothers, and those with the same mother are closer to each other, but Henry notes that he wants to talk about Leviathan. He wonders how Noah carries it around, so he takes it out, and reveals that he can hide it in his sleeve, since it taught him how to control its size. At night, the thugs are still waiting for Noah to talk to them, but their leader starts to lose it, and he calls out to Noah. So he uses Leviathan's power to threaten the thug, causing him to freak out, and his friends tell him to just keep his head down. Noah meets a man named Radok, who takes him to a room full of nobles, and they all recognize him as the 13th prince. Radok asks him about the sword he's carrying, so he explains that it's a gift from the crown prince, and everyone recognizes it as a national treasure. A man thinks it's just a toy replica, but everyone stares at him, so he becomes embarrassed. Leviathan becomes angry and unleashes its power to attack everyone, but Noah stops it, and they're impressed that he was able to control it. The nobles introduce themselves to Noah, reveals that he came with his daughter. But Noah knows that she's adopted, and explains that he can tell just by looking at the way she behaves, thinking she's a former slave. He's impressed that Noah was able to guess it correctly, and admits that he bought her as a slave, but he decided to adopt her since she learns quickly. Noah finds their story interesting, and notes that he'll invite them to his mansion so that he can talk to them, but as they walk away, we see that the other nobles are jealous since Noah acknowledged them. He tells Radok there's another reason he could tell she's adopted, and as he unleashes Leviathan's power, she immediately responds to it. He explains that she's been protecting Byron since he first used his sword, and notes that it isn't how noble girls behave, because they're usually the ones being protected. The next day, Noah meets the 8th Prince Oscar, who invites him to go treasure hunting, and they head to Cobalt Street, where they see antiques from all over the Empire. Oscar reveals that most of them are fake and explains that a noble should be able to find the real treasures, so they start looking around. He doesn't find anything interesting, but Noah sees a strange book and decides to buy it for 3 rein. Oscar realizes that it's a grimoire of a legendary sorcerer and notes that it's a real treasure, which they will be able to sell for 1,000 rein. He wonders how Noah knew what it was, and we learn that he had no idea, but his wind affinity increased when he touched it, so he decided to buy it. He prepares to stab it with his sword, since he knows that only beings with a will of their own can change his stats, which means the book must have a soul inside it. Dark energy suddenly comes out of it, and it brings forth the sorcerer's soul, which has been sealed inside the book. Oscar suggests retreating, since he knows that the sorcerer is a master of wind magic, but Noah uses Leviathan's water to destroy it. Oscar wonders how the street wasn't damaged, so Noah explains that he aimed upward, and Oscar is impressed that he was able to make that decision in an instant. A merchant named Alan tells Noah he needs his help, since he wants to know if the item he owns is a real treasure. He takes them to his store, where he shows them a ring, and explains that it's supposed to show its true form when its true owner appears. But he has shown it to a lot of people, and it never responds, so he thought it was trash and tried to get rid of it a number of times. But it keeps coming back to his store, so he thinks there's something special about it, and Oscar tells Noah to try it on. So he wears the ring, but it suddenly recognizes him as its new owner, and transforms into a suit of armor. He realizes that it didn't change his stats, which means it doesn't have a will of its own, and he tells Alan he wants to buy it. But Oscar decides to pay for it, and tells Noah to consider it a gift. After that, we see Noah as he gets off Oscar's carriage, but the leader of the thugs suddenly attacks him. So he uses his ring to defend himself, and the driver of the carriage takes the thug down, as Noah wonders why he hasn't given up yet. Oscar asks him how he blocked the attack, so he explains that the ring automatically protects him if it senses danger, since he linked it to Leviathan. Noah returns to the theater, where he watches Alice perform, but there are men that start fighting over her, since they both want her to have a drink with them. Noah uses his sword to embarrass them, causing them to run away, and the owner apologizes for their behavior. Noah tells him to ban people like that, but he explains that he needs customers to keep his business alive, so Noah offers to buy the theater for 1,000 rein. The owner gladly accepts his offer, and Alice wonders how she can repay him for everything he's done for her, so he tells her to just keep singing, since he likes listening to her music. He knows that she has potential, which is why he wants the Emperor to watch her performance in the future, and he tells her to devote herself to singing until then. He returns to his seat and listens to her as she puts on a stunning performance, thinking the other treasures in the capital are nothing compared to her. We see Noah in his room, where his mates tell him he has a guest, so he orders them to let him in. He meets the Governor-General of Hanzhou named Dread, who is ordered by the Emperor to manage flood control in his area, but Noah can tell that it isn't going well. We learn that Hanzhou is a grain-producing region in Almeria near a large river, but it suffers from flooding on occasion, so the Emperor ordered Dread to solve the problem. Noah wonders why he hasn't solved it yet, so he reveals that he hasn't received funding from the Empire, because the Ministry of Finance keeps coming up with excuses. Noah visits the head of the Ministry of Finance named Maverick and asks him why he hasn't given Dread the money he needs. He explains that Hanzhou hasn't been paying taxes since the Emperor granted them tax exemption after they suffered from flood damages last year, so he thinks they still have leftover tax money. He notes that they should use it instead of asking for funds from the Ministry of Finance, but Noah tells Maverick not to underestimate him since he knows that Hanzhou has no money because of the floods. He explains that his father granted Hanzhou tax exemption because they're in no position to pay for it, and he tells Maverick to tell him the truth. So he explains that he can't give Hanzhou the money they need, since the Empire needs funds to build the Emperor's vacation house, but Noah tells him he's committing a crime against the Imperial family. He tells Maverick he's using the Emperor as an excuse to not give the people what they need, and threatens to report him to the Emperor if he doesn't distribute the funds. So he orders his men to give Hanzhou the money immediately, and Dread is amazed that Noah got Maverick to yield without lifting a finger, so he praises his negotiation skills. Dread leaves for Hanzhou to work on the flood control projects, and a man reports to Noah, telling him the Emperor wants to meet him. Noah heads to the palace, where the Emperor praises him for dealing with Maverick, so he explains that he just did what he thought was right. But the Emperor knows that it's difficult to deal with dishonest people, and he's impressed that Noah was able to do it, even though he's only 6 years old. The Emperor can't believe he has become Leviathan's master, because he knows about its dark history, but he thinks Noah needs to learn how to wield it. So he introduces him to the Empire's greatest swordsman named Damien, and notes that Noah should learn from him, but he wants to test Noah's strength right away. He takes out his sword, and tells Noah to bring it on, so he prepares to fight, but the memories of Leviathan's past wielders suddenly flow into him. He charges at Damien, who tries to block his attacks, but Noah uses a technique to disarm him. He knows that he won thanks to Leviathan's past wielders, and Damien admits defeat, telling the Emperor he has nothing to teach Noah since he's no match for him. The Emperor realizes that Noah is a genius swordsman, so he decides to make him the head judge in the knight selection exam, telling him he's the perfect person for the job. He promises to complete the task, and we learn that fighters from all over the Empire will participate in the exam since they want to become successful warriors. Regional preliminaries are held to determine the best fighters, who will fight for the top spot in the capital, and the champion will join the upper ranks of society as a knight. His first job is to become a subordinate of the head judge, and Noah thinks he needs to pick the best fighter in the exam so that his stats will also improve. Damien notes that Noah gets to decide the competition format, so he tells his father to get rid of the regional preliminaries because he wants to do all the judging in the capital. After that, Zoe tells Noah that Doso only sends one candidate for the exam every year, since they can barely afford travel and lodging expenses. Noah wants more candidates to participate, so he promises to pay for their expenses, and tells Dylan to buy all the vacant houses and talk to the merchants in the capital, since they need to be ready when the candidates arrive. Noah talks to Byron, and wonders why his services are so cheap, so Byron explains that he gave Noah a huge discount since he's the 13th prince. But he knows that Byron is lying, since merchants don't give away money out of compassion, and he asks Byron what he wants. He's amazed that Noah was able to see through him, and admits that he needs his help with the palace employment exam, since he wants the Emperor to hire a girl he knows. He notes that he already sent a token of gratitude, and Noah promises to put in a good word for the girl, but explains that he'll only do it if he likes her. Byron promises to pick a candidate who will measure up to his standards, and he asks for permission to put Noah's crest on his store sign, since he wants to elevate his status. So Noah realizes that Byron wants to be his subordinate, and he warns him that he won't tolerate betrayal. That evening, we see Noah riding a carriage, and he notices that his stats have improved, since he accepted Byron as his subordinate. But he suddenly sees that his water affinity went down, so he thinks something must have happened in Almeria. He heads to the Emperor and tells him Almeria has a problem, and he wonders how Noah found out about it, but his servant suddenly reports to him. He realizes that Noah is right, since there's a rebellion in Almeria, and he asks Noah if he knows how big it is. He thinks about how much it changed his stats, and tells the Emperor it must be small at the moment, so the Emperor reveals that he's right, since there are only around 5,000 rebels. He asks Noah if he wants to deal with them, but he knows that the soldiers won't listen to him, since he's still too young to lead them in combat. He thinks his older brothers should lead them against the rebels, and the Emperor asks him who he wants to recommend, so he notes that Henry is the best choice, since he's the most prudent of his brothers. After that, Noah travels with Henry in a carriage, but Leviathan suddenly senses danger, so Noah orders the driver to stop. He knows that the attackers want to get rid of him, and he doesn't want to get Henry involved, so he jumps out of the carriage, but they suddenly trap him with their water magic. They prepare to take him out, but he manages to break free, and he thinks they're Almerian rebels, since they know how to use water magic. They try to cut him down, but he easily defeats them, and their leader can't believe they lost to a kid. Henry is impressed that he was able to take them down, but wishes he had the chance to interrogate them, so Noah tells him they're still alive, since he only used Leviathan's threat to knock them out. The next day, Noah talks to Byron and tells him there's a rebellion in Almeria, but he wants him to keep it a secret. He knows the cavalry are the center of their forces, and he orders Byron to buy all the horse feed in Almeria, since he wants to starve their horses. Byron thinks his plan is brilliant, promising to carry out his orders, and Noah thinks about how it should make the fight easier for Henry. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.